Hey everybody, Hostrone here with another first edition Friday video for you. This is going to be the last video of the calendar year 2025, and just like the end of 2024, let's talk dilemmas. So a year ago I just basically did a discussion where we went over what like a lot of the top dilemmas are and like second tier dilemmas and things of that nature. But this year, what we're going to do is we're going to theory craft what I think could possibly be the best combination of dilemmas to put into a Squire's Rules deck. So, Squire's Rules, seed in the doorway phase. So your opponent gets to know that you're doing this immediately. At the start of dilemma phase, shuffle all your dilemmas. You must seed them without looking at them. When your dual dilemma is revealed, if no other copies of that dilemma that you own have been revealed this game, it stops one personal. Otherwise, if it is a misseed. All other cards you seed beneath missions are misseeds except for artifacts, and you may not download dilemmas. So basically what that means is that you cannot seed planet dilemmas or space dilemmas, because they would then, the Squire's Rules considers them to be a misseed. So you can't even quote unquote roll the dice that you're going to try to like randomly get lucky and have a planet dilemma end up underneath a planet mission. You do have to basically stick to all dual dilemmas. And you basically need to stick to one copy of each. You don't have to. You can roll the dice that it ends up not being duplicated under the same mission, or that your opponent won't face another copy of it. But that sort of risk, for the most part, I don't necessarily think is worth it. So we're not even going to attempt that in this. I don't think there's a single dilemma that you could put underneath that I would consider to be worth the risk that it might get duplicated and thus like completely blow out the remaining dilemmas, or be a dead dilemma, and or be a dead dilemma underneath another mission. So the entire point of the Squire's Rules is for you to try to maximize the fact that you're getting additional stops on an opponent, right? So what I've done is I went through every single dual dilemma in the game, and there's just over 200 of them. And I've pulled out the selection that I think are the only ones that are worth doing for the most part. There's a few that got left out, namely the capture dilemmas. The capture dilemmas would be considered if you were going to pretty much do anything with capture dilemmas, or with capture at all, but I don't see much of a reason to do that otherwise. So we left the capture dilemmas off, even though I think that they could still be good. I just don't think that they're generally good. Like if you're going to play a Squire's Rules deck with like any other deck, I don't necessarily think it's the way to go. So what we have here then is the collection of dilemmas that I think you could put into any Squire's Rules deck. Okay? Now, I went through them after pulling them all out, and I've sorted them into different groups. And I think that this is important. I think this is, in my personal opinion, this might be something that I don't know that like other players have done. They may have, or they may have only done it like loosely. But I think that grouping this collection into little subgroups is going to be the key to figuring out the best way to do it. So once we've done that, once we've grouped them into these different categories, then what we can do is try to figure out a ratio of how many from each category we should be playing with, because when it comes down to it, you got to shuffle all these up and you got to put them randomly underneath missions. And so you have to basically like play the statistics of, if you're putting 3 dilemmas underneath each mission, then the statistics are always going to be, it has a 33% chance of being a first dilemma faced, 33% chance of a middle dilemma, 33% chance of a back dilemma. And so you need to understand like how to balance it. Now, this brings me to what I think is an important aspect of this, and that is that I think that the math comes out best if you put 4 dilemmas underneath most of the opponent's missions, because I mean you still need enough non-dilemma seed cards to make your deck go, because this isn't going to hold out. I mean the entire point of this is it's just supposed to be a grindy delay tactic. It's not really going to like shut the opponent down, really, okay? Because you don't really have proper setups and proper hammers, right? So my personal opinion is that the type of deck that you should play with the Squire's rules is 2 things. One, it needs to be a deck that can put 4 dilemmas under most of the opponent's missions, which means we need to be talking that you're playing like 22 to 24 dilemmas. And then also 2, it needs to be a deck that can then punch the opponent to some degree, so that when you're seeding, you could put like just 2 dilemmas underneath a mission that's nearby where you happen to be, and your opponent's scared off from even trying to get into your zone or crossing your zone to get to that other mission that only has 2 dilemmas. So I think that we're going to... So I have 2 different decks. One that seeds 23 dilemmas and one that only seeds 20, so that I can kind of show you how, like, what the differences are between that, right? And so, but first what we're going to do is we're going to go through the different groups and we're going to pull the dilemmas out and see if we can't make a good ratio or figure out a good ratio. So the groups are dilemmas that will stop one person to start, stop a second person, stay on that person, and then be a problem, right? M113 creature kind of is, I couldn't find a better group to put it in. It doesn't stay on the person, but it stays on the mission and continues to be a problem for a couple of turns. So I just put it with this group, okay? Our next group are what I call the problem now, not a problem later, right? Dead end, you face it, it's going to keep someone out of a mission, but since you don't know where it's going to go, it's not reliable. Things like linguistic ledger domain and a friendly fire lock the opponent out if you get lucky that it triggers, but then they just got to wait out the countdown. And then Edo Probe, Experience Beach. I mean, Edo Probe, in my opinion, doesn't belong in this at all, probably, because if it's faced last, it only stops one person, and then that's just it, right? Tricyclinate Poison is one that could potentially be good on the front end and the back end of a dilemma, but since you don't know where it's going to go, you don't know how good a skill mix it's going to require, like how good of a requirement it's going to have. But we're going to examine this here as we go through. Okay, so then the next group are what I call the this should have been up here. Problem now, not a problem later. Sorry, that one got moved accidentally. So this is what I call the recurring problems, this is the problem for some, not problem for all group, right? Then we have over here, we have what I call the setups, right? These are the setups. These are the ones where they may stop a group for a bit, and then they might pose a minor inconvenience. But yeah, so maybe that's a better name for them. The minor inconvenience group, right? Okay, and then over here we have what I call the hammers. Okay, so these, this is what you're trying to have hit an opponent to throw them off their game entirely. And then over here, the largest group are what I call the qualifiers. Okay, so the qualifiers are all basically walls. They may do something additional. They may kill a guy, remove a guy, relocate a guy, like hard time sends them back to hand. But at their basic core function, what they do is they require a specific group of people in order to get past. So it is the largest group. It is the most useful group because they always require your opponent to have something, and many of them might kill or remove some people along the way in addition to the stop that's coming from the Squire's rule. So this is probably the group that we're going to pull the most from. But the question is, though, is that like you can't just live on these, though, because then it just becomes a game of the opponent can just like, they can just send down like two guys, one of them stops, one of them sees it, they don't have it, then the next group goes down, beats it, and just becomes like the small group that stops, sees it, and it's basically just unlocking doors. Your opponent's just unlocking doors, right? And if all you do is make the opponent try to just unlock doors, they're eventually going to just like maybe encounter a mission where, you know, if they see that on one mission where you're just making them unlock doors, well then the next mission they're just going to like send everybody and see if they can lock all the doors in one go. So that doesn't really help you too much. You need to have some of these other curveballs. You need to have a mix in of absolute hammers that make them pay, and then you need some things that throw their game plan off, and you know, and so forth. So yeah, typically a normal dilemma combo is like wall. If it's a 3-card combo, it's some sort of like qualifier, hammer, and then like another wall, right? If you have a 4-card combo, you can kind of change things up, but the idea, generally speaking, with dilemma combos is you want to set them up and then you want to make them fail it, right? You want to make them invest resources and then fail and then hit a hammer that, like, you know, punches them in the face and delays them for a couple of turns, hopefully. With Squire's rules, you don't have that as a reliable option. But what you do have is that you can utilize the unpredictability of where things are to your advantage. So if we're seeding 20 to 24 dilemmas, so with one of them we're seeding 23. So what we're going to do is we're going to put 4 dilemmas under like 5 of the missions, and then we'll have 2 or 3 dilemmas underneath the other one. So I can't remember if one of the decks is we get 22 or 23. I think it's 22. It's 23. Yeah. Okay. It is 23. But what I'm saying is, though, is that, you know, we'll have 3 dilemmas under one, and we're going to have 4 bangers under everything else. We may even, if we identify an obvious, like, this is the mission they want to do first, we can put 5 under it, and we can put 2 under the mission that the opponent is probably going to never attempt, right? Okay? Read and react. Coach Kevin's rule number something or other is after the mission phase, read and react. Okay. So, with 20, let's just say 22 because it keeps the math easy in my head, 22 dilemmas, we need to have basically, I think you need to have at least 6 walls, you need to have 6 setups, you need to have 6 hammers, and then probably 6 of the, like, you know, random stuff, whatever, right? And then the random stuff that we choose should be things that also work well with, like, like other things that mess the opponent up and mess their plan up. Because there may be a situation where, you know, we shuffle up and we deal them out, and like we get like all walls like underneath like a single mission, and the opponent sees that one first, and maybe they think, okay, oh, it's just gonna be, I just gotta unlock doors, right? And so then they go into the next one, and the next one might be like, here's a hammer, or here's a, then hopefully we get lucky, and it's here's a mix-up followed by a big old hammer, right? No matter what happens, then our unpredictability is working in our favor. But if we go like all walls, they're just unlocking doors. If we go all hammers, there just isn't enough of them. There's just not enough hammers here, right? And if you go with a mix of like, say we use all of our problem for some, not for all, into our hammers, well, if the hammers get faced first, then our problems for some and not for others, they don't do the job, right? They delay some of the people, they don't really like do anything, and then if like the last dilemma or the next dilemma is, you know, then we follows up with one of these, then we're kind of behind schedule here. So that's why we still need to have, just I think, a good mix here, right? So we're going to find the front 20 of dilemmas that I think are the ones that you need to have in the ratio that you need to have them, and then we'll extend that to the 23 then for the other deck, right? So the two decks that I've chosen to show what I mean, the first one is the staging ground deck. So the idea with the staging ground deck is that we're able to seed a Bajoran Mirror universe in a spot where then we can then, during the mission phase, get the Bajoran wormholes inserted so that we can kind of cordon off a section of the Alpha Quadrant space line. Now, if your opponent's entirely Delta Quadrant, then it doesn't really matter, but then it puts all of our missions like right next to each other, and we're shooting for a 2-mission win. And what we'll have the ability to like just be able to do a 40-pointer and a 60-pointer to win, right? Okay. But the idea is that we can easily cordon off a section of the space line where we think that maybe we're going to be able to keep the opponent from ever getting to it, so we can seed lighter on that end and heavier on the other. The other deck, the one that, and this is the one that's getting 20 dilemmas. So the idea with that one is that we'll do 4 bangers under 4 of them, 3 under another one, and then maybe one mission that's clearly never going to be gotten to can just take one dilemma, just to kind of scare them off from, well, if you don't randomly bring it, if it happens to be one of the walls, they don't randomly bring it, then they might be set up to get blown up. So yeah, the other is naturally going to be a board deck. It is a quote-unquote friendly board deck, but it's also one that doesn't necessarily look like a board deck. But what we want to do with it is, in the Alpha Quadrant, we will interlace our missions with theirs, so there will be like one part of that space line where they are not going to go to. And the part of that space line they're not going to go to is pretty much the end of the space line that we start at. So once we've decided I want to start over here on this end, then we can put just like one dilemma, put the 2 or 3 dilemma combo underneath that mission, and then we can put 4s and maybe 1 5 dilemma combo underneath the other missions, and in particular 5 underneath the mission that the opponent looks like they're going to start at. Because there's a lot of decks that have a clear like starting mission. So we'll start with the first 20, and then like I said, we'll add the other 3 then. So let's start with what hammers we want. These are the dilemmas that are going to completely mess up an opponent if they get faced at the correct time. Now, in my opinion, anaphasic organism and Nagilum is a great one, right? If they just randomly don't have science, security, and medical, we can make a female away team member with highest total attributes resign, is discarded. And it will also stop one person first. So we'll stop somebody, then maybe... So I should probably say this first, though. Our overarching idea here is that we need dilemmas that make it difficult for the opponent to know whether or not they should attempt with a lot of people or very few people. We want to make it so that the dilemmas that we choose make it so that if they attempt with a lot of people, if our dilemma combo group ends up being ideal, they're going to pay. Even if it ends up being middle of the road, it's going to hurt. If they attempt with very few people, we're really going to make them pay. Because the idea is if we put in, you know, like 6 hammers, then statistically speaking, 3 of them are going to end up in the second half of a dilemma combo. Because this is the reason why I think that going with 4 dilemmas is better than 3, is because instead of it being 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 for front, middle, back, we change the math to basically 50% chance to be in the front, 50% chance to be in the back, right? And if we're using, like, say, 6 hammers, every single hammer has a 50-50 chance to end up in the back. Law of averages, typical game. 3 of them end up in the back, 3 of them end up in the front. And if that happens, then then we can either get lucky that the opponent attempted with not enough people and we hammer them in the front of the dilemma combo, or they attempt with a lot of people and the first 2 dilemmas set them up to get hammered in the back. So Anaphasic Organism Nagilum does that perfectly. It stomps a person, maybe removes another person, then Nagilum stomps a person, and then they needed to have 3 diplomacy or strength greater than 40, and if they don't, half the crew or away team is going to get killed. So I feel like this one goes in for sure. Kazon Bomb is another one. It's hard to, I mean, this is one where having 3 security or 2 security and a tricorder or 3 defense board kills all people present who have printed strength less than 7. This one is an absolute must because it might hit even like a decent team right at the beginning. They could attempt with like 7-8 people and they may still not have it. So Kazon Bomb is amazing, especially since under its wording of present, if it's faced in space, everyone on the ship is present whether or not they're stopped, and on a planet it's still the same present as anyone who is on. No, sorry, on the planet it gets a little bit worse, but you know, it's still a good dilemma. Alright. Same with Barclay's protomorphosis disease. They have to have 3 different things. We possibly give the opponent 10 points, but there's always the chance that, you know, if it's faced in the front, they needed to have a lot of people to be able to reliably get through it. If it's faced after a couple of things, then there's a good chance that they don't have it. And if we get lucky that it happens to be faced by in space, this one says entire crew, so it doesn't rely on present, so entire crew will die. So this is one that the upside of it is so big that it's just worth doing. Same way with Male's Love Interest Plague Ship, it has the possibility of wiping them out completely, and even if it doesn't, it will stop a guy, remove a guy, stop a guy, remove a guy, right? And by remove, it basically makes them unavailable either by, so it's going to remove 2 people outright. One's going to go away on the Male's Love Interest, one's going to go away on the Plague Ship. So, you know, we just make them unavailable for remaining dilemmas if we face it early, and if it gets faced late, it might actually kill the entire crew again. So it's worth playing no matter what. Then we get to the hammers that don't necessarily hammer the team, but they hammer the opponent's possible point total. Balancing act is a question of, is this one worth doing? Romulan drones is one that likes to try to get away with, we're going to play 5 space, 1 planet. There's always the chance an opponent tries to play 6 planets against you. This one's a meta call. I'm not going to put it in ours, but it is one that I think a person should seriously consider. Then we've got the point, the other point drain ones, and these actually are like much more reliable. The opponent, if they want to like just micro team to see the dilemma, we can make them lose 10 points really easily. If hazardous duty gets faced early, it's both a wall and a possible point reduction. If it gets faced late, it's still just a wall that requires 2 officer, and they don't necessarily get it through it on the first try. Higher the fewer is maybe one that we don't choose for now, because all it's going to do is stop one person and then, you know, make them lose some points. But if this one gets in a spot where it's like face first and they decided just to go with like a minimum 3 people, it was not worth it. So these 2 are going to go in. So we have our 6 hammers to start with. Now let's find our 6 best walls, and the walls that we want are going to be probably the ones that that probably kill someone or otherwise remove someone, in order to like potentially make the situation better for us. Because if it gets faced first, it's possibly removing people for the later on dilemmas, and if it's faced at the end, it's just a really good wall in a really good spot. So that means then that Spatial Rift is kind of an auto-include. Misinterpreted History is an auto-include. Rules of Obedience is an auto-include. Immediate is an auto-include. And Berserk Changeling is an auto-include. If we can play with AU Dilemmas, Quantum Leap goes in, but neither of the decks is playing with AU Dilemmas, so we will not put it in. So that leaves us with Hard Time kind of being an auto-include, which is funny because I was looking at all the decks that are a lot of the decks that were posted that have played with Squire's rules, and I think I saw Hard Time only once, which surprises me because I think in this kind of a dilemma pile, it's kind of an auto-include because it bounces someone to hand, so someone is removed. And yes, if they can replay that person for free the next turn, that's fine, but maybe that person still takes up a free play that they were going to use on someone else. So it's not necessarily that, you know, the case that, oh, they just play the person for free or whatever. If Hard Time gets faced away from the outpost or their other reporting facility, then they still have to replay that person. They have to go collect them again, right? So Hard Time is still, I think, really good. And it is also a wall because they need to have a number of personnel remaining equal to the number of red dots on that personnel. Generally speaking, most personnel have at least 3, if not 4, skills on them. So I think the statistical average is like 3 point something. And so there's a good chance they still need to have 3 or 4 other people remaining to go on to the next dilemma. And if they don't, then they stopped a guy, had a guy bounce, and then like say like the remaining 2 people. So if they went with 4, the remaining 2 people don't get to go through, and they get to attempt again, in which case another person gets bounced. So Hard Time seems like an auto-include, right? So that gives us our 6 auto-include walls. Now let's find our 6, amongst the remaining group, let's find our 6, like problem for some, not all, throwing a wrench, trying to gum up the works, right? But they still, I think that the has to be good at the front, has to be good at the back, is the most important aspect of what we're going to choose from this last group, right? So, this is kind of a wall that also removes somebody. I mean, this is one that I felt like could bounce between both of these 2 groups, so I kind of like it being a choice because of that reason. And then I like the repeatability of Galaxy is Impure. So it's going to randomly stop a person, randomly kill a person, and then go on the mission. This is one that really follows the, like, if they go small, we hurt them. If they go big and they don't get through, it's still a problem. So I really feel like Galaxies Impure is a really strong one to include. I feel the same about Beta 12A Entity, the fact that it will stop somebody, and then if it's not the last dilemma faced, I mean, if they don't solve the mission or cannot solve the mission, it's going to throw it's going to continue to be a problem at that mission. If we get lucky and it's where they, like, their reporting facility is or what have you, or if we get lucky, or if it's like at a planet and they left people on their ship or something, it starts to become like a real problem that really throws a wrench in. So it kind of follows the same logic as Galaxies Impure, that not only does it do a thing, but it can, like, repeatedly do a thing and just be super annoying. So for now, we're going to put it in. But I would say it's one of the weaker candidates, so we're going to kind of, like, put an asterisk on this one. I like that this one is kind of a wall, kind of a removal, but just having a male and female is not hard. Archaic Ritual also was one where, like, it's going to stop 3 people, then it's going to stop its 1, then it's going to stop 3, but then it goes away. And so, like, if they attempt with 4, like, say you're playing as an opponent that has a ref tent, they have to attempt with 4, or if they do a minimum attempt. If they face it early, it could potentially just get, like, beaten, and they don't get to see, and they don't see the next dilemma. But if they go with 5, then it's like, okay, they get through this dilemma, and then just one person sees the next dilemma, gets stomped, but never faces it, so they still get to see it. I don't really like it, so this one's probably not going through. Kunat Caliphie is really only good when you know what you're trying to set up, so we're not going to put it in quite yet. I really like Temptations of the Flesh for the fact that if they don't necessarily attempt with enough people, it is one that, like, it's hard to get through. So it's really good in the front by forcing the opponent to send a lot, and it's really good in the back because, once again, like, if they're trying to push their way through, it's probably going to hold up, and then it's not reliable to get through even if it's the last dilemma faced. Because if you've got several objectives in play, your opponent's got several objectives in play, plus it stops someone for the Squires, it could potentially stop 6 people before they even get to, like, see if they beat it. In which case they have to have, like, 7 command stars, or 7 Enterprise E people to reliably get through it. So I really like Temptations of the Flesh. Mission Fatigue is one that I would love to love here, but if it's like the last dilemma faced, if it's faced 3rd or 4th, it's not very good. So we're not going to go with that one. White Rabbit is one that if it's faced early, it is also one that actually almost made it into the, like, hammers pile. Because if they face it early, then they could potentially not get through, and then the mission's worth. They have 2 turns to try to get through the mission. But the thing is, though, is if they face it early or late, and they happen to have, like, just physics and archaeology is all, then it's one that's just so easy to get through. It's so easy to get through, and then it does nothing else. I want to like this one, but I just can't right now. Clown Guillotine, I think, is potentially really good because it falls into this is all like this is another one that almost made it into this because it is essentially a wall because they still need to have the 2 diplomacy present. So this was like another one of the borderline ones where it could have been in a different group. So we're gonna put it in because then it acts as a because it's like it's one of those like it can potentially like delay an opponent for multiple turns. So like Clown Guillotine is essentially falls in this group, could have been arguably part of this group, could have arguably been part of this group, and when it's a triple threat like that, I'm gonna probably put it in, right? Remat Detonator is one that it's just kind of it's just a wall now, but then the fact that it can like remove someone later on makes it pretty good if there is like one personnel that's that you want to remove. But since you don't know what is where, knowing what that is not as reliable. So we're gonna set it aside for now. Clown Game is one where it's likely to hit, but then when it doesn't, it really sucks. And it's only going to do that one time, and then it's going to go away. And I'm not a big fan of discard the dilemmas for a Squire's Rules deck, because that basically means that stop one. It's one where if the opponent only hits it with a few people, then it really sucks for you, because like it stopped a guy and then it just stopped the other guy and then it goes away. I don't like that. If they, again, our goal is to make our opponent hurt if they attempt with few, and then need to attempt with a lot, and then hopefully we get lucky and we make that large team like feel the hurt as they go through, right? It doesn't qualify, it doesn't make the cut. All right. So then that puts us into this last group. We have one slot left for our group of random troublemakers. And of that group, I would say the best random troublemaker is going to be M113, because it's going to it's going to stop someone now, kill someone now, and then if they don't push through, it's going to kill someone at the end of the turn. The problem with it is that since it goes on the mission, you don't stop someone again, and you don't get to kill someone again. And that's the problem that each of these have. So maybe we don't pull from this group quite yet. In which case, our next best option is probably like Female's Love Interest Garbage Scout, because it's just Female's Love Interest Garbage Scout. It means they have to have something, they have to then do something with their people. And so I suppose we can put it in for now, but it's another one that I'm not necessarily a huge fan of, okay? So that gives us our front 18. And now we need to basically pick 2 of the best of the rest for us to put in for the one deck. And in which case, we're going to go with probably one of these, we're going to go with probably qualifier walls, because again, walls are always good in the front, they're always good in the back, right? It's just you can't have an entire pile, or even a pile that's like mostly them, just because, like I said, if all your opponent knows to do is just to unlock doors, it's just a matter of time, right? So let's pick the best 2 out of this group, in which case I feel like Clown Festival is probably the best, because if it gets faced early, they need to have sent the right number of people. If it gets faced late, once again, they need to have the right number of people. And since you don't know since they don't necessarily know who's going to get stopped, that number shifts. There's always a 50-50 chance that who it stops messes with the math, right? Because it can have no more than the highest integrity present. So then they have to try to find just like the right group, where no matter who stops, it's like, okay, no fewer than lowest. So it's like, okay, my lowest is like a 4, and then like my highest is a 7. Well, I need to now have like 2 7s, and I need to have 2 4s, right? So I kind of like it for the fact that this adds a bit of chaos and kind of acts a little bit like one of these other chaos generators, right? So we're going to put a chaos, this one in, and then I would say probably probably Shuttle Crash, just because it's going to stop a dude, then it's going to stop a youth, then it's going to stop an officer. I mean, this is ideal, of course. And having 2 navigation early or having 2 navigation late isn't necessarily something that's easy to do. Whereas just coming up with like 2 medical and 4 science late is probably a little bit easier, especially since scientific method's a dilemma that everybody prepares for a ton. So we're going to go with Shuttle Crash, okay? Alright, so that gives us our 20 for the deck that, you know, has 10 seed cards. Now let's find the next best 3 for what we're trying to do. In that case, in order to kind of keep our ratios good, we're going to try to pull, we'll try to pull one that like potentially can hurt a lot, one that's going to be chaotic, one that's going to be a bit of a wall. So like amongst the cast, but again, the general rule of they have to be good in the front, they have to be good in the back of the dilemma still applies. So, this is where it gets tough because like we've basically pulled out like the best 20. So now, now it's going to just be kind of arguing semantics here. So, I think what we'll do is we'll pull one of these 4. The issue being is that I don't think that there is any dilemma that's left that is actually good in the front and good in the back. I mean, other than just these hard walls, but again, I don't, you know, we need to make sure we keep a good balance of chaos involved as well. So, let's argue all these walls then first. So nanobiogenic fugitives will stop a guy, then they'll need to have 1 physics or 2 engineer to stop, and then they'll still need to have the 2 computer skill and physics, so that's not necessarily easy, so I like that one as a candidate. Trilithium raid is just a straight up wall. Straight up wall, straight up wall, more or less a straight up wall, and in which case it's strictly worse than nanobiogenic because this 2 computer skill and physics is better than just the 2 computer skill, and then this one provides additional options, so this one's just kind of out for sure. Incentive-based economics is also just random, but it's just a key to unlock. And then there's nothing to really like hammer it. We could put friendly fire in there, but what's the chances that they're ever going to line up in the same mission with incentive first, right? So I don't really like incentive-based economics necessarily. Thasians is a straight-up wall. Nuclear disarmament's kind of the same thing. If you're going to require 2 computer skills, no one's passing with animal. If you're going to require 2 computer skill, then you might as well just require another skill, right? Now, it does require a lot of people, so it is good early and it is good late. So it's another one that I suppose we could maybe argue for. And like I said, scientific is just a straight up wall, so yeah. dead end, like I said before, you know, it has to hit the right mission, has to hit the right mission at the right time, so it's just not one that I would consider. Tricycanate could be good. If they hit it early, they may not have had it because they needed to send a lot of people. If they hit it late, then we might have ground them into it not being good, in which case it does hold them off for 2 missions. So I guess it's a possibility. Edo Probe, like I said, is just not good. Experience Beach, I think, just not good for the same reason. If they hit it early, then they just change missions that they grind, and then they just come back, and then that's one less dilemma they got to face again. So I don't really like that one. Linguistic is just Anthro and Exo, and then if it ends up in a mission that doesn't have any icons, it's worthless. It's then strictly worse than Friendly Fire, and then I suppose Friendly Fire is technically both a push them off the mission for a couple of turns. If they face it early, they need to have it, and they need to get lucky that they didn't get randomly stopped into it. If it's faced middle late, it probably gets set up perfectly, so I suppose we can argue for that one. Of this group, 3 Science might be the hardest one, and the fact that Integrity is probably the attribute that tends to have the most variability. And with each of these, it's basically strictly like a law of averages. Like whatever their range is, your chances of ending up in like the top half is always like 50-50, right? But generally speaking, like the higher numbered attribute people for cunning and for strength tend to actually also be like the same number as the other higher ones. And so there ends up being like an entire group that you can miss. Whereas Integrity tends to be one where, you know, like a group will have like a 6 or a 7, but then it'll just like randomly have like a 2 or a 4 or something like that. So of this group, I feel like T'Pol's probably the best one, because like 2 exobiology is not necessarily hard, and cunning is not necessarily the best one. 3 engineer is probably the easiest to cure, and then strength, like I said, I don't know, like against certain affiliations, like their highest one, they might be all the same, right? Yeah. Like their lowest strength and their highest strength might be like very similar to each other, so yeah. And then I like the fact that this keeps going with them. Like that person just gets left behind permanently. And then they can end of turn kill a dude, and then if they stick around, you know, if they want to take them with for some odd reason, that person becomes its own problem. Kind of becomes a continuing problem. So let's actually go with T'Pol hash some issues. Now we've got to choose between these 5. And in which case, I do kind of like the random chaos if a T'Pol has some issues. Because it's better in the sense that this stays at the mission and will run down, and this could potentially just stick around for a while. So let's go with it. T'Pol has issues as our chaos agent. Let's go with nanobiogenic because of the fact that unlike this one, this doesn't stop anybody. First, this is going to stop, you know, 2 people minimum, if not 3, before you even have to face it. So I like that as our best wall option. And then these are, in a sense, kind of a hammer each, in the sense of like if they face it early, it's both a qualifier and a bit of a hammer. So let's pick one of them. I feel like this one gets planned for a lot, but at the same time, this could always just end up in this one could just always end up being straight up beaten very easily. So let's just go with the friendly fire. Okay. So that gives us our 23. But like I said, the 3 that we pick last would not be in the selection for the 1. So we'll set all of these aside for now then. And let's create our hypothetical situation. And let's just actually just go with all 23 for right now. We're going to go with the deck. We're going to go with the deck that gives us all 23. We'll put this in the Dyson sphere, shuffle it up. Let's put missions out as if we're facing an opponent that is in our quadrant with us. Alright. Study Nebula first, they pick a side. Let's assume it's this side. Confront duplicate, we isolate it. Then they've got 4 and 4, so let's just keep going. Let's just say they keep going to the right for no other reason. So they go here, so then we interlace them here. That's only 3 spans, so chances are they just keep going in that direction. Then we get repair. That's another 4 that's in their way. They go here. We get evade Borg vessel, so that we have another we have another nebula in their way, and then we get our last planet last. Let's just say they just keep going in that same direction, in which case we would go like this. If they were a smart opponent, they would then put their last mission here to keep us from having a nebula at the end. But it doesn't really matter. If they do that, then this is the mission that we cordon off entirely for sure. So it just makes it easier. It just makes it easier because, like, whatever mission, because we're going to be on this end, so whatever, if they have a mission here or a mission here, that's the mission that we're going to that we would just cordon off, right? Because we're just putting all the things out. We would strategic base here, new arrivals here, this here, and then we would stick. They will be coming like right here. So we have the candidate for that. So since that's the case, and we have to like literally flip them so that we don't see them face down. We could just put the 2 right there to start, and then we would just go 4 bangers all the way across. And it truly doesn't matter how we do this. We could just literally go like 5 across, and then one of these is going to start flipping them, and then I gotta like reshuffle it. Yep, that's the one. Two, 3, 4, and then let's say that our opponent just starts right here, so we would put a 5th one here. And then now let's see what would have happened. So what ended up over here in the two by themselves would have been probably. It's unfortunate that our Galaxy's Impure ends up over here because it's really, really nasty. But the T'Pol has some issues, got buried over here, which is totally fine because again, it's probably our weakest dilemma that we have in the entire group, right? It's probably the weakest. Over here in the strongest, they would have started. Wow, that's really good. They would have started with stop a guy, lose a guy, end the mission attempt. Now they got to move this. They move it, then they come back, then they got to reattempt. And then they would have been caught with anaphasic organism Nagilum. So 3 people were stopped. 4th person was stopped. If they were attempting, say they're attempting early with like 8 or 9 people, they would have lost half of them. If they could move the ship, they would. Then they'd come back and possibly just reattempt with like the 3 or 4 they had. Someone stops, and then if they have it, they would go through, and then Nagilum's probably going to whack them. If they didn't have it, then we removed a person. Now they get to see that it's Nagilum, and they just got to make sure that no matter who stops. But again, we don't necessarily need to hammer him with Nagilum. Nagilum's now just turns into a like qualifying wall. So then they reattempt and they beat Nagilum, but they stop a guy first, beat Nagilum, and then hit Eminion, which is not easy when you don't know that it's coming. So that's possibly going to stop them for a bit. And then when they do hit it, if we got lucky and hit with that planet, we got a perfect setup here. Well, sort of perfect, because like they would need the 2 security, but then someone's got to stop. So hard to say what an opponent would do. So there's that. If they even beat that, well, see, there we go. See, we had one that just ended up in a very bad spot. But the front 4 were really good, and we don't even know that the opponent would attempt this one. It's right here, but, you know, just plowing through this probably would take 3 turns, right? Then when they move on in either direction, these are decent starting qualifiers each. That's a tough one to get through. Spatial Rift, you know, misinterpreted, whacking the highest cunning. That's a perfect pair. Then that would have led into Temptations in a great spot, into a Clown Life Festival in a great spot, because they would have to send enough people to get through this one, and then the Clown Mice Festival is not getting through. Over here, even if they get through this, Forsaken into Nanobiogenic, which that's a good spot for it, because it's just tough to get through while it's also stopping people. So, yeah. So I definitely feel like these 23 are definitely good. This is definitely a solid 23 in my opinion for this. So this is just my take on what I think is probably the best 20 to 23 dilemmas for a Squire's Rules deck. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and have a Happy New Year.